Governor DeWine signed amended substitute House Bill 197 into law. This law is in response to health risks associated with the coronavirus outbreak. Among other things, the law allows public bodies, such as boards of education, to conduct their meetings using telephone conference, video conference, or other similar technologies. The law became effective on March 27th, 2020. On November 22nd, 2020, the governor signed House Bill 404, extending the temporary authorization for members of a public body, including a board of education, to hold and attend meetings or hearings via electronic technology until July 1st, 2021. At the March 30th, 2020 board meeting, the West Geauga Board of Education approved a resolution to suspend portions of certain bylaws which were not consistent with board meetings by telephone conference or video conference. A second resolution will be passed tonight, extending the board's ability to meet via electronic means until July 1st, 2021. This meeting is a meeting of the West Geauga Local School District Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the West Geauga Local School District's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. Please use the chat room function located at the bottom of if you would like to be recognized for public participation.
So Chet, we should call the meeting to order and take attendance.
Well, I said roll call.
Roll call. Mr. Ramey?
Present.
Dr. Beers?
Here.
Mr. Kotowski?
Here.
Ms. Leavenworth?
Yes, here.
Mr. Thorson? Not yet.
Not yet. Please join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay,
All right.
let's do this thing.
All right. Jim, can you pull up the tax budget presentation?
I am working on that right now.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. The Ohio Revised Code requires us to, you as the board, to prepare a tax budget and hold a public hearing. The tax budget was advertised in the Maple Leaf on December 31st as required by law. And at this point, we're going to go over some of the nuances of the tax budget because this year is a little bit different than what we had last year because of the territory transfer of Newberry. And I want to go through those. And plus we had a Triennial Evaluation update this year. So I want to go through that. You are required to have this meeting prior to January 15th. Once you've adopted that tax budget, which you'll do later on in the meeting, I'll return that into the county auditor by the 20th, and then they will hold a tax budget commission meeting and then return that back with us to us with the certified tax rates. So that will be done by March 1st. So Jim, you can go to the next, I'm running. Go to the next slide, please.
Did that change on your screen?
It
No.
did not.
Not yet.
Okay. Let me just try this again.
There we go.
There.
As I said before, the last update we had was in 2017. That was a full 6-year revaluation. In 2020, the county auditor updated through a triennial update the assessed tax valuations for West Geauga and Newberry. So if you look in the first column here for 2019, that's the tax year 2019. That's why it's a TY. You can look and see West Geauga had $640 million in assessed value, Newberry had $171 million in assessed value. That class 1 and class 2, that's our residential's class 1, class 2 is commercial. And then the West Geauga PUP, that's public utility. So we look at that. So if we look at all of 2019, we were at $856 million in assessed value. And then 2020, we are now at $932 million in assessed value. That's a $76 million increase when we look at that in total. If you look at West Geauga just by itself, because we're still putting these two entities together, 2020 is still, the tax rates are separate. So we're still looking at these two districts and adding them together. So West Geauga had a 9.6% increase in its residential and commercial, 3.3% increase for its public utilities. Newberry had an 8.8% increase, but they had a decrease in their public utilities, and that's related to a gas line company that went bankrupt and that had a significant presence in Newberry. They were never in West Geauga, but they were in Newberry, so we didn't see that same decline on the West Geauga side. We are also seeing that in other Kinston, Cardinal, and Chardon have even greater declines in their public utilities. So the treasurers did meet to talk about that, and those properties were bought by another entity. They're still here, so we should see some of that coming back online. However, the valuation is minimal because they bought it out of a federal bankruptcy court. All right, so if we can go to the next page, please. If we look at the fiscal year versus the tax year, and that's why this is a little bit different this year. If we look at fiscal year 2021, we have the tax year collections of the second half of tax year 19, and then the first half of the tax year 2020. So we're just now ending the 2020. You'll see those increase in the valuation. So we're seeing those come in, and we won't have those collected or collected until March. So we'll see some advances come in, but we won't see the full collections until March, and that's for this fiscal year. For fiscal year 2022, which is what you're looking at for your tax budget, you're going to see the second half of the tax year 2020, which we'll receive in August, and the first half of the tax year 2021, which is estimated off tax year 2020 because we haven't got those valuations yet. And that'll be so that's kind of when you look at these things, that's kind of why we have this unique year of fiscal year 2022, where we're still putting Newberry together on the Newberry rates, and we're still having West Geauga on the West Geauga rates because we're still looking at 2020. And since we did the transfer as of June 30th, 2020, we cannot, they don't make that transfer in the mid-year. You have to wait until the tax year is completed, and then 2021 will be all on the same West G rate. All right, Jim, if you could go ahead. All right, so if we look at our estimated tax collections, this is kind of what it looks like here. The second half of tax year 2020, we usually collect about 48% of our taxes. The first half collects 52%. The second half collects about 48%. We see that we have still West Geauga collecting about 7.3 million, Newberry 2.1, so $9.5 million in combined. When we look at the first half of tax year 2021, again, it's 52% of total collections versus 48. You see the $10 million for a total of $19.6 million as an estimate. And again, we're estimating what 2021 is going to look like. This is that large increase is really indicative of that $76 million increase in our tax value, plus the 52% increase versus a 48% collection rate. So that's a 19.6 million. If we look at the emergency levies, they're a little bit different. And part of that is because they're fixed in nature. They don't fluctuate based on the valuation. They collect, the same amount of money no matter what the valuations are. So Newberry, if we look at that, they had $376,000 on their emergency levies. We still had emergency levies of 2.8 million for 3.2 million. And then we go down a little bit, even though we went to 52%, it's still going down because they're now fixed. So this Newberry fixed amount, the emergency levy of 376 is going away. Those levies now in the first half of 2021, those are going away. So we're not going to pick those up anymore. And so this fixed amount at $3 million instead of our $5.2 million in total is coming across on that first half of tax year 2021. Total of $6.3 million. If we look at that total for the year for the general fund only, $25,931,000 is our estimate that we'll ask the tax commission to certify. Per our November forecast, we had estimated $25,637,000, a difference of $294,000, which is about a 1% variance. That I will say that the $76 million increase in the tax assessment assessed value was much higher than what we had predicted. We've never seen triennial updates with that large of an increase. They're usually 2-3%, and when we're looking at 9%, that is a significant increase, and that's translating into that a difference there. So still, very much in line with what our forecast was. We'll see what collections are for the first half of 2021. If you recall, the county auditor had asked us to look at 95% collections. We far exceeded that in our second half of tax collection for 2020 or 2019. We had been closer to our typical 98-99% collection. So we'll see what those look like. But we're estimating about $25.6 million in the forecast, but we'll ask the county to certify $25.9 million. Jim, can you go to the next one? On the permanent improvement fund, we still have Newberry collecting a 1 mil inside millage for half a year. That's at $75,000 that you see for Newberry. West Geauga, ours is $374,000. The second half, Newberry, West Geauga will collect $475,000. That 1 mil will drop off from Newberry because that's inside millage. That all goes away again, just like we had talked about. So we'll collect for the fiscal year 2022, $897,000. Now that's a little less than what we normally will collect with a new valuation. We'll collect around $914,000 per mil, but that's because of the split between the 48 and the 52%. So about $900,000 is what 1 mil is going to generate at 98% collection rates. So that is a increase. We were collecting about $724,000 for 1 mil. So we are seeing that additional valuation of Newberry coming online in our inside millage, getting to pick up that inside millage increase. When we look at our effective tax rates, this is really where we, you vote something, and then over the years, because of House Bill 920, those millage rates, those effective tax rates decrease as the valuations go up, because that's kind of the way House Bill 920 works. So I wanted to look at this and say, okay, what does that mean for us as we combine the two entities together? Because we had anticipated that there would be a reduction for the West Geauga residents, and there is. So when we're looking at the 2020 effective tax rates, we see that West Geauga has, and this is for class 1, 29.01. Newberry's running at 27.4. When we combine the two entities together, the estimated, and this is because of those emergency levies now getting split between West Geauga and Newberry and getting spread between the all over the district, we see a decline to 27.48. And this is going to show, so that 29 mils to 27 mils is about, it's going to be a little less than 2 mil decline. And that's what we had thought about when we first started talking about this territory transfer. What was the impact for the West Geauga residents? What was the impact of the Newberry residents? Overall, the Newberry residents tax declined around 14 mils, a little over 14 mils. West Geauga's decline is going to be around 2 mils. So we're seeing that come about in our estimated tax rates. Now, again, we're estimating what it's going to be in 2021. This will change a little bit based on valuations, but it's going to be somewhere in that range. Class 2 doesn't decline, it declines a little bit as well. That's commercial, similar 31 to 29. And then the PUP is not related to House Bill 920. It doesn't fall under that. So these are really close to our voted millage rates. So West Geauga had voted 51.49. Newberry 58.93, and then we're going to go down that 2 mils, so 49.79 will be kind of as we pull those emergency levies together and split them between Newberry and West Geauga. So we're still in line with what we had predicted, what we had discussed or projected back when we started talking about the territory transfer. It's coming to fruition. And we're seeing, some savings for our taxpayers. So we look at this next slide. I think this will tell a good story for us. This is a 10-year history of our effective tax rates for West Geauga. In 2011, we were at 34.86. In 2016, we had the PI levy fell off, and that was a 2.75 mil PI levy. So we went down to about 31.21. That was our effective millage rate. Then as we look at this triennial evaluation, so as the valuations go up, our millage rate is going down. So we're losing a little bit. So we're down to 29.19. And then when we combine the two, we're going to go to 27.48. So we're still seeing from a 10-year period, our effective tax rates are going down about 7 mils. Part of that's because the PI levy fell off, that 2.75, but part of it's because the valuations have increased, and we've added those valuations because those emergency levies get on there and they split everything apart. It does have a significant decrease for us as we increase our valuations. We're seeing those go down. So where we originally passed those emergency levies at like 5 mils and something higher, they're going down to almost 2.75 or 3 mils. So we're seeing almost a cut in half because of the increase in the valuations. And they, again, emergency levies only collect the 3.7 million and the 2.35 million. They collect a fixed fee of going across. So the increase in the valuations don't really add more taxes. So, but I think this is a good story for us from the standpoint that the taxpayers are having that effective millage go down. They will see it. Unfortunately, some people have their increase in their valuations go up. So I'm not sure it'll exactly work out the same from a decrease on their tax bill, but we are keeping that very steady from the last 10 years. And again, no new millage has been voted on by the board, and we did reduce a PI levy by 2.7 mils. So that's something that I think that the board has been very effective in managing this over the years.
What are we doing to advertise that and to market that? I mean, I think that's a story we need to tell as simply as possible.
Yeah, and that's something, certainly this is one way as we talk about the tax budget and how this is working. As we look at it, it'll be something that we want to talk about probably if we do the annual report and send that out. I'll talk about that in the annual report this year as we publish, because that's sent out to every resident in the district. And this will be the first time that we're sending that annual report out to the Newberry residents. So this will be the time to really talk about that. This is our, we'll have our audit completed. We had that completed in December. It's time to start talking about the financial part and get that out. So I know Rich and Jim have been working on kind of what they want that to look like, but get that out and send it to every resident.
Yeah, it just needs to be as simple as it can. I mean,
I know.
Here were your taxes in 2011. Here are your taxes 10 years later, gone down 7 mils.
Yeah.
I mean, boom.
Your tax rate's lower.
Your tax rate's lower, but your valuation is higher. Those are very good things. I mean, yeah, the fact that your home has increased in value, but we haven't added additional taxes. That's the biggest story. We haven't added additional taxes. You actually had one of those tax levies fall off, which is the PI levy. So I think that, your tax bill may not change much, but it's not going up, with an additional levy, certainly it would go up. And we're still seeing that we haven't added any new levies. So, all right, so that's kind of any other questions we have on the tax budget. This will be turned into the county upon your adoption tonight. and then we'll wait for them to certify those rates. I have sent this off, because this was an unusual year, I did send this off early to the county for them to look at, because I didn't want to have any type of question at the last minute. So they have looked at this. Mr. Walter and his group has looked at this and said it's reasonable based on the estimates that we have. So I feel pretty comfortable with that.
Well, okay. Thank you.
All right.
Next up, nomination of the board president.
Yeah, shall we,
Is it-
Mr. Ramey, we still need to open it up for public comments on the
Oh,
tax
yeah.
budget?
Forgot about that. I didn't see anything in the chat though.
No. Are there any, Jim?
There is nothing in the chat room. So I'm assuming nobody wants to make a comment.
Yeah, my fault. I looked, skipped.
And I believe Mr. Thorson is online now.
He is
Yep.
here.
All
Are we
right.
open for nominations now?
Yes.
Yes.
I nominate Chet to be president for this next year.
Second.
There is no second needed on the nominations. but Thank you.
There is no second.
There is.
There is no second to Ramey.
It's Ramey. There is no second.
I move the nominations be closed.
All right. Shall I take the roll?
Yes, please.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes,
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson.
Yes.
Jed, if you, I will read this resolution since you are the person being nominated. The Board of Education of West Geauga Local School District hereby nominates Chet Ramey for President of the West Geauga Board of Education for the calendar year 2021.
I need to read that?
I will, shall I take the roll?
Or do we just jump to the roll call?
We'll go into the roll call. Mr. Katowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
yes,
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers.
Yes.
I would like to issue the oath of office. Mr. Ramey, you'll raise your right hand
Can you see
and
it?
say,
Disappears every so often.
I will, if you will respond, I will after I read this. I solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that I will faithfully and impartially perform my duties as President of the Board of Education of the West Geauga Local School District in Geauga County, Ohio, to the best of my ability and in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted during my continuance in said office and until my successor is elected and qualified.
I will.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
Okay. The vice president then?
Let me ask, Ann, you're next in the logical rotation. Are you interested in the vice presidency?
No, thanks.
Okay, I'd like to nominate Kathy Leavenworth for vice president.
Second. I know.
Second need-
Second.
doesn't need a second.
It's Kathy. There is no second.
I move to close nominations.
I'll take the roll.
So,
Ms. Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
yes,
Mr. Ramey,
yes.
Mr. Thorson.
Yes.
I'll read the nomination. The Board of Education of the West Geauga Local School District hereby nominates Kathy Leavenworth for Vice President of the West Geauga Board of Education for the calendar year 2021.
Roll call?
Okay. Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
yes,
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson.
Yes.
Kathy, I would like to give you the oath of office. Raise your right hand. Say, please respond, I will, after I read this. I solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that I will faithfully and impartially perform my duties as Vice President of the Board of Education of the West Geauga Local School District in Geauga County, Ohio, to the best of my ability and in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted during my continuance in said office and until my successor is elected and qualified.
I will.
Thank you. Okay. All right, we'll proceed with the organizational meeting. There are a lot of resolutions to get through, so I'll make those as quickly as possible. Resolution 3, to approve the 2021 board meeting dates, time, and location.
So move.
Second,
Wait a minute. Does that mean it's at home?
As
Is
long
that
as
the
you want it
location?
to be, the location will,
Your house, though, I mean,
It's fluid. The location is fluid.
Yeah, because I'd like it to be at Rich's farm if that's an option.
He won't be there, but okay.
I see.
Is there any more discussion, or are we just going to keep going like this?
Come on, take control, Chet.
the rowdy bunch. It's going to take a stern hand.
It's true. Okay, call the roll, please.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers.
Yes.
Resolution 4, to establish the service fund for the Board of Education. This will be in the amount of $20,000 that will be allocated for board business and expenses.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski.
Yes.
Resolution 5, to approve the 2021 compensation for board members. If you recall, you still have a split compensation amount until the next election.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth.
Yes.
Resolution 6, to approve board appointments on behalf of the board. I believe we have 3 appointments that we would like that Mr. Ramey would like to have someone appointed to. The
Moved.
first one is the legislative liaison.
Ooh.
Anyone interested?
I can continue to do that if you want.
Thank you.
The second is the student achievement liaison for the OSBA.
Well, I've done that for a couple of years, except last year there was not much to do, but I'd be glad to do that again.
Thank you. And who knows, it may continue in that vein.
Correct. And then the last one is the OSBA Capital Conference delegate and alternate delegate.
All right, I'm not doing that again.
Do we need to do that now, Karen?
We can wait, or we can take care of it now, and I don't have to ask you to do this again. We typically do it here, and then I send it in when it's time.
Oh, go ahead and put me down.
That's the spirit.
Okay, you're ugly.
Do we have an alternate?
I will be an
Alternate.
alternate, but it does present a problem for me because of the past president's gathering that's at the same time. If it's virtual again, we should be fine if I have to step in, but if not, you're high and dry, Bill.
We can always assign someone else.
Yeah, let's see if that's a problem. I mean,
And on the,
I have plenty of experience doing that.
all right, on the joint rec board, there's no one who is, whose term is ending this in 2021, but these are your representatives for the joint rec board at this time.
Okay.
So, Mr. Ramey, we need a motion.
I moved that we accept this slate of appointments.
Second.
More discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey.
Yes.
Thank you. Resolution 7 to adopt the operating protocols for regular meetings, and I've listed the order of the meeting in your document.
So move.
Second.
Discussion? Seems reasonable. Call the roll, please.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson.
Yes.
Resolution 8 is to approve board member participation in group benefit plans for the 2021 calendar year.
So move.
Second.
And discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers.
Yes.
All right, these are specific duties that you're applying to the treasurer, and then we'll go on to look at the superintendent as well. So resolution 9 to approve the authorization resolution for January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2021. And there's a list of several authorizations that you're approving at that point.
So move.
Second.
Discussion? Do we have to read this?
No, but I would like to just go through the financial institutions. Huntington National Bank, Fifth Third Securities, First National Bank, Middlefield Bank, and Star Ohio. These are institutions that we have deposits or investments in. And then we will apply interest to the following general fund, from the general fund to 006, the special trust, the student managed student activity accounts, and the auxiliary funds. So we pay, if those are still holding funds, the general fund will pay them interest and allocate those interest to them as we get those.
Okay. Call the roll, please.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski.
Yes.
Resolution 10 to authorize the treasurer to file tax and counter tax complaints.
So move.
Second.
Discussion?
Uh,
Call the roll. Well,
We may have a new law that changes this. If we do file a tax complaint, that the board would have to authorize each one of those tax complaints or look at them as a slate. Right now, our counter tax complaints are looking at anything that is over $100,000 if the valuation has changed. With the increase in the valuations, I do expect that we'll have a number of board revisions, or trying to get the tax board to change that. We may want to relook at those counter tax claims as we get those in and determine whether or not we're going to continue with our $100,000 valuation change that we would file a counterclaim on.
okay.
All right.
That's fine. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth.
Yes.
Resolution 11 to approve the designation of the newspapers to include the News Herald, the Plain Dealer, the Chagrin Valley Times, the Chesterland News, and the Geauga County Maple Leaf.
So move.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Thorson,
Yep.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey.
Yes.
Resolution 12 to approve the representation of legal counsel to include Brinza McIntyre and Seed, Ohio School Council's Legal Assistance Fund, Squire Patton and Boggs, and Walter Haverfield.
So moved. Second.
Who was the first? I'm sorry.
No, I was.
Thank you, Mr. Thorson.
This obviously covers everybody that we normally use. We tend to think of the attorneys by name rather than by company. And I know that there's different organizations that we use for different aspects of our legal requirement or assistance, whether it's property or special ed or negotiations or whatever. So those are all covered in here, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers.
Yes.
Resolution 13 to approve membership in the Ohio School Board Association.
So move.
Second.
Sec-
Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
No.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski.
Yes.
Resolution 14 to authorize the 2021-2022 membership in the Ohio High School Athletic Association.
So move.
Second. Discussion? Anyone? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth.
Yes.
Resolution 15 to approve the designation of Taylor Insurance Group as a health insurance broker consultant for the calendar year 2021.
So move.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey.
Yes.
Resolution 16 to authorize the board president and treasurer to borrow funds.
So move.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson.
Yes.
Resolution 17 to adopt the tax budget for the 2021-22 fiscal year.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? You want to say anything, Karen? Anything more?
No, thank you.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers.
Yes.
Thank you. Superintendent's business, these are authorizations that you're giving Rich. So resolution 18 to approve the authorization resolution for January 1st, 2021 through December 31st, 2021.
So move.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski.
Yes.
Resolution 19 to approve the establishment of the 2021 committees on behalf of the district leadership, administrative leadership. These are the superintendent committees. They will include Business Advisory Committee, District Communications Committee, District Curriculum and Technology Committee, Diversity Initiative Committee, Facilities Committee, Finance Committee, Insurance Committee, Newberry Property Disposition Committee, Policies Committee, School Safety Task Force, Wellness Committee, and the West Geauga Professional Development Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, anyone? Call the roll, please.
Mr.
Just real
Ramey.
quick,
Oh,
Chad,
wait.
how do we determine who's on those committees, Karen? Actually, I should say Rich.
Rich does.
Rich,
I know.
Essentially, those are committees that I put together. The Business Advisory Committee would be the exception. That's one that's really determined by the county because it's a county committee. On the other ones, I will appoint people to those committees, but certainly if there's anyone that you want on those committees, all you'd have to do is tell me and I'd make sure they were on it. So if the board has someone they would like to have on a committee specifically, just let me know and I'll make sure they're on.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Anything else? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth.
Yes.
So if you'll send those, your volunteers, if you'd like to volunteer for a committee or be on a committee, if you'll send that to Rich, then we'll get that, you'll be added to the list of committee members. Resolution 20 to appoint the designated staff appointments for the 2021 school year for our Title IX Compliance Officer, Anti-Harassment Compliance Officer, Disabilities Act Coordinator, 504 Compliance Officer, Civil Rights Coordinator, Homeless Liaison, Foster Care Liaison, and the dreaded Asbestos Manager.
So move. Second.
How do you become an asbestos manager?
You're very unlucky. You've sinned in a previous life.
Yeah, but you can stand the heat, can't you?
Oh,
Oh, boy.
Hey.
Okay, no more discussion.
Oh,
Yeah.
my
Call the
ears.
roll, please.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
yes,
Mr. Ramey.
Yes.
Resolution 21, to approve support groups for the 2021 calendar year, excuse me. Those
So
will
moved.
include-
second,
Got it.
Call the roll, please.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
yes,
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson.
Yes.
Resolution 22, to approve the girls lacrosse as a club sport for the 21 calendar year.
So moved.
second,
So this is different than the lacrosse then, right? Because couldn't girls play on the lacrosse team that we have now?
This is a club sport. They usually have club sport for 3 years. And then if
Right.
they have enough interest, then they'll then they'll come before the board to be included as a varsity.
Oh,
sport.
so I'm mistaken then. I thought they were already varsity. Did
No,
we just-
they are not.
Boys are.
Previously, the same resolution, the same process that we're in now?
This is I believe, Rich, this is their last year as a club sport.
I
And then
believe
next
so.
year,
I have to check on that, but it's the same process the other teams go through. Our boys are a varsity sport. Girls lacrosse has not been, but it's scheduled to become one soon.
Why did I think lacrosse could be co-ed?
I don't know.
Just-
It's not
It's
typically.
not, okay, I'm sorry. I thought it could be, so I'm sorry. Thank you.
No need to apologize.
Is soccer the same way, Rich?
it's
Yes.
separate.
Boys in a soccer? Okay,
in a
I'm
girls'
sorry.
side.
thank you.
Swimming is right now the one that we have. Gymnastics can be co-ed and swimming.
Okay, thank you.
I guess
Okay.
all of them can be co-ed.
Well, I suppose. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
yes,
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers.
Yes.
Okay,
I distinctly heard Kathy's kitchen vote.
I did. Mr. Ramey, I believe you would read this next one.
Okay. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the West Geauga School District hereby adjourns this meeting at 7:31 PM.
I can have a second.
Second?
Call the roll, please.
Ms. Leavenworth,
yes,
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski.
Yes.
All right.
Now we swing right into the next one.
Yes, we can.
Governor DeWine signed amended substitute House Bill 197 into law. This law is in response to health risks associated with the coronavirus outbreak. Among other things, the law allows public bodies such as boards of education to conduct their meetings using telephone conference, video conference, or other similar technologies. The law became effective on March 27th, 2020. On November 22nd, 2020, the governor signed House Bill 404, extending the temporary authorization for members of a public body, including a board of education, to hold and attend meetings or hearings via electronic technology until July 1st, 2021. At the March 30, 2020 board meeting, the West Geauga Board of Education approved a resolution to suspend portions of certain bylaws which were not consistent with board meetings by telephone conference or video conference. A second resolution will be passed tonight, extending the board's ability to meet via electronic means until July 1st, 2021. This meeting is a meeting of the West Geauga Local School District Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the West Geauga Local School District's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. There is a time for public participation during the meeting as indicated in the agenda. Please use the chat room function located at the bottom of the webpage if you would like to be recognized for public participation. We call the roll, please.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
yes,
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson.
Yes.
All right. Are there additions and changes to the agenda?
Do we need to pass the resolution referred to in the, in the preamble that Chet just read?
No, it was passed on December 16th,
Yeah.
2020. Sorry.
Okay.
I'll correct the language for you.
Then can I get a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth.
Yes.
Public remarks. I don't see anyone in chat. Jim?
I do not either. Chat room is completely empty.
All right. We'll move on.
Resolution 24 to approve routine matters of the West Geauga Local Board of Education to include the minutes from the December 14th meeting.
So move.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey.
Yes.
I have to read the next one in totality, so. An announcement for the board members' participation in the group benefit plan. Mr. Dan Thorson, a member of the West Geauga Local School District Board of Education, has elected to participate as of January 1st, 2021 in the West Geauga Local School District's dental care plan under Ohio Revised Code Section 3313.202. By board resolution, Mr. Thorson will be responsible for 100% of the cost of his individual participation. There's no action the board needs to take. It just needs to be read out in public and put into the minutes. Resolution 25 to approve the amendment to student activity statement of purpose and budget for the 2021 school year.
So move.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Mute.
You're mute.
You mute.
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson.
Yes.
Resolution 26 to approve to accept the donation from Dr. and Mrs. William Beers for $500 to the music department.
So
So
move.
moved.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Beers.
You are welcome.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers.
Yes.
All right, I'm turning this over to Dr. Marquardt.
Resolution 27 is to approve a classified staff appointments for the 2020-2021 school year. There are two.
So move.
Second.
Figure that one out, Karen.
So
Yeah,
do
straight
do
now.
a replay. Do we have instant replay on Zoom?
Well, we're recording the meeting.
We do.
Yeah.
Call the roll, please.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski.
Yes.
Resolution 28 is to approve a change in a non-exempt staff contract for the 2020-2021 school year.
So move.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yeah.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth.
Yes.
Resolution 29 is to approve an unpaid leave of absence.
So move.
Second.
Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey.
Yes.
Resolution 30 is to approve supplemental contracts for the 2020-2021 school year as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey.
Yes.
Resolution 31 is to approve service contracts for the 2020-2021 school year.
So move.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Ms. Kotowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes,
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson.
Yes.
Resolution 32 is a resolution to approve a proposal and agreement between Newmark Real Estate of Ohio LLC and the Board of Education of West Geauga Local Schools.
So moved.
Second.
Any?
Rich, is there anything more that needs to be said with this? I mean, you were pretty good with your kind of in your update. I mean, it's sort of a moving target, I guess, money wise.
I think in terms of reviewing, if I would just remind the board what this is, there are actually two stages to this, or two steps. One is a highest and best use study, which entails an economic and feasibility analysis of the property. Some looks at the possible uses of the property, zoning requirements as they relate to the property, demographic data, et cetera, and some of the hypothetical uses for the property, which would certainly include what the Newberry Township trustees have put on the table up to this point. The second step is one of consultation. It's one where we would work with David Hollister, who's the representative of Newmark, to determine a host of other needs and other answers to questions that we might have. There are actually two phases to the step two. Phase one is an information gathering process for which we already have many of the answers. It's the less expensive of the two. It's probably a $2,000 prospect whereby we look at asbestos, the location of various components on the property that we already know are there, the existence of a bus garage, et cetera. And then the second part of that is one that's more detailed. That's one where we actually would have to look at some of the research on some of those. The most costly element of that is really the environmental study. We believe that's going to be complicated by the existence of at least one underground fuel tank. And so there are prices associated with each of these steps in the process. When you look at it, I know I had given the board a summary of what I thought would be a sort of a ballpark analysis of costs associated with this. Today, at the urging of Chet, I had also spoken to Mr. Hollister saying, what's the timeline whereby we can report out on here? I think that the first update from him could come at any time that the board wanted it. The wetland study, which is as part of this process of investigation, is one which is partially weather dependent. Apparently there can't be snow on the grounds when they're doing a wetland study. There's not a time of the year in Northeast Ohio and Geauga County where you don't have water on the ground. So I guess the snow would maybe obscure a little bit the existence of seasonal waterways and waterways that are permanent. But he seemed to think that the initial phase of the study could be done in about a month. He said the wetland study and the highest and best use study could run concurrently, and they would be probably about a month in duration. But then he said the environmental study could take somewhat longer. So the environmental study might take an additional month or so, depending on what they would have to do in terms of core samples and digging up tanks or exploring the use of the tanks. So I really think that probably we won't have a final answer until sometime in March in terms of how this is all going to go. But certainly along the way, he would be able to advise the board in terms of what he was finding preliminarily. The reason I say this is when I hear that there could be a highest and best use study done probably in about a month, I'm very hesitant to accept that as fact when I know that the environmental study isn't going to be done for about 2 months. And I really think the environmental study is going to influence greatly what the highest and best use outcome is going to be. So I think we won't have our final answers until about 2 months down the road. Chet, did that answer your questions? Are there any more specifics you wanted?
No, that's good. I mean, I understand that, like Dan said, this is a fluid process, but it sounds good with the timeline you sketched out.
Thank you.
And have you been involved in these before, Dan? In anything you've had to sell?
I always thought the wetland study had to be done by the Army Corps of Engineers out of Buffalo. So I thought you were contingent upon them, and that usually takes a little bit more time, but maybe things have changed. But not quite this extensive. As you guys recall, I was a councilman, and we did some work on some property that we were going to take over in Burton. That took us a while. But if he can do that, it's pretty ambitious, and I think that would be a great time
About a
frame.
month for that. So I don't know. He may have to go through the Army Corps of Engineers. I don't know, but he did tell me about a month on that one.
Or is he going to do a literal survey, or is he going to do an assessment of whether or not there are wetlands? Because like what Dan's talking about is the legal aspect that you have to go through. And I'm wondering if what he's talking about is doing a preliminary survey to see if this is a concern.
No,
Rather
I think
than
he's
a
talking about a
survey
fairly
with
thorough,
development.
survey, Ben, because in Geauga County, I know just from building a home here, that there's a process that has to be undertaken because they have to look at not only the wetlands that are year-long wetlands, but they also have to look at seasonal wetlands, and they can be pretty restrictive in terms of what can be done with the property. He said that it's customarily, and Dan, you could address this, he said it's customarily paid for by the seller of the property, that we would have to do that prior to listing the property so that any potential buyers would know if there were going to be restrictions based on the existence of wetlands. And certainly that could preclude the use of the property for certain purposes and would not really affect its use for others.
Yeah. Well, do you literally have to do this though, is what I'm asking both you and Dan, because when say acreage is sold, I mean, isn't that just simply sold as is? Here's the acreage. No, really? That doesn't happen anymore?
I mean, it could, but you know, it depends. I mean, if the land's being purchased for cash and the buyer assumes it, sure. But if there's any kind of, you know, lender involved, so to speak,
Yeah.
or if it's tied to any of that, yeah, they'll want an impact study done, and they'll want to know all about that. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're doing the right thing, Rich. Plus, whoever we sell it to, we know exactly what we sold. So I think it's wise.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then presumably we don't have problems with someone coming back and saying, well, there was a gas tank buried there that you didn't tell us about.
Yeah. And you know, Bill, on the other hand, we also don't have somebody coming back and say, you didn't get anything near what you should have gotten for that gem in the middle of Newberry. You know, I mean, either way.
Yeah.
It means that there's a fair transaction.
Right.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, that's it.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes,
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers.
Yes.
Resolution 33 is to approve the College Credit Plus Memorandum of Understanding between Kent State University and West Geauga Local Schools for the 2021-2022 school year.
So moved.
second,
Discussion? This is just a renewal of an existing agreement that's been in force for many years, right?
Correct, and I think the rates are the same, correct, Karen? Did they change?
No, not since last year.
Okay.
Call the roll, please.
Ms. Leavenworth,
yes,
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski.
Yes.
Resolution 34 is to approve the College Credit Plus Partnership Agreement between Lakeland Community College and West Geauga Local School District for the 2021-2022 school year. This is a seminar.
second,
I'm sorry, who was the first?
I was, Dan.
Thank you.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth.
yes,
Take it away, Rich.
Okay, my report tonight will be brief. We've now begun the second semester of the 2021 school year. Today was the first day of in-person instruction in that second semester. I'd like to publicly thank our staff, our students, the community, et cetera, who've been helpful and cooperative with us throughout this pandemic so that we could implement the protocols that allow us to keep our schools open. If you've been watching our daily COVID-19 dashboard, you can see right now that our counts of active cases have spiked in the wake of the holidays. Fortunately, we had gone remote for a week, so all of those students who have been identified as positive cases and the 2 staff members who have not been in school. They have been remote for this week, so we did not have to quarantine a host of other individuals because they came in contact with them. And so those students who are infected with the virus have not been in school to be in contact with our other students who've returned today. So we're hoping that our numbers will decline throughout this week. We expect that some of those students will be released to return to school tomorrow. And so hopefully it's one of those situations where I don't want to brag and say, hey, it served our purpose to postpone the resumption of in-person learning after the holidays, those being Thanksgiving and the Christmas, New Year's winter break. But I do feel that it probably did work in our advantage. So we are back in force now. And right now, one of the things that we're awaiting is the announcements from the health department on when the vaccine will be available for our staff here at school. It's anticipated that will be early in February. The date on that, I know that the governor has released some tentative dates. Those are not really firm because the availability of vaccines is not as regimented as one might think. But it looks right now as though it will be early February that the first round of vaccines will be available to our staff starting at that time. That's it.
Thank you. I assume that there are no board reports. So I will,
Speaking of that though, Chet, are we, is this when we do the board committees or
well,
or
I
is
don't
that
know.
next meeting when you talk and make assignments for different board members?
Let's do it next time.
Yeah.
I don't have anything prepared for that this week.
Yeah. Okay.
Good God, Kathy, we got 10 minutes for kickoff, please.
Yeah, I mean.
Oh,
what do
I'm
you
sorry.
think? Oh, no,
That out
we're all
loud.
thinking it. I will take a resolution to adjourn to executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Call the roll.
Mr. Thorson,
Yes.
Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
Yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
Yes.
Mr. Ramey.
Yes.
And we'll adjourn into executive session for personnel matters, the appointment and/or employment, discipline, compensation, and negotiations.
And we will invite Rich and Karen, I assume. Anyone else?
Nancy as well.
Okay. Welcome aboard, Dr. Bennett.
Dr. Benacasa.
Yeah.
Dr. Mark.
And will there
please.
be any action taken after executive session?
There
It's
will
up to you.
not. The
Second.
board, yes. Board meeting the 25th. Motion to adjourn? Dan?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
I
I think you got to call the roll.
Got to call the roll. Dr. Beers,
Yes.
Mr. Katsowski,
yes.
Ms. Leavenworth,
She
You're muted, Kath.
Muted again.
muted again.
I don't know. Yes.
Mr. Ramey,
Yes.
Mr. Thorson.
Yes.
All right.